Hello, nice to all of you to have met you. Welcome to this, what should be quite an exciting session. My name is John Metzelaar. Introducing myself first, a bit impolite, but I guess somebody's going to do it. I'm leading the Innovation and Transformation Institute or capability for the Conference Board, which includes managing two of its councils, the European Innovation Council, Innovation Leadership Council, and an Asian Innovation Leadership Council. And I've been working already quite closely with Hype Innovation over the last several years. I find them to be really nice partners. They were part of the Future Innovate and Transform open conference that I hosted in Amsterdam last November. And they were kindly enough to sponsor. So the relationship keeps on getting stronger. And so this is a collaboration between Hype Innovation and the Conference Board. And we're going to go and use this hour to explore this, what is still a relatively new capability, I guess you can call it, the ISO 56000 standard, or the 56K standard, as I've now seen people refer to it a bit cooler. And within that, there is an interesting tool that's sort of the basis for it, which we call an innovation maturity assessment. And we're going to explore that new capability in this session. Now, I'm a bit of a novice to this, to be honest. Initially, to be very honest, when I saw an innovation management standard, I got a bit cold feet because, is it driving even more rigidity in innovation than some companies already have today? But if you step back and you look at it as a helpful tool, piece of reference, and maybe using parts of it, once you understand where your opportunities are in your innovation management program, I've sort of flipped the other way to go and say this is actually quite an interesting tool for us to really internalize and see how we can all of us use it. And as I'm a novice, I'm thrilled to be joined in today's call by two people that know what they're talking about. And one is an expert and one is a practitioner. And let me start with the maybe illogical practitioner first, and then I'll quickly get back to the expert. The practitioner here in the call, as you can see, prominently featured, is by now a good friend of mine, Thanos Yiagopoulos, who is also one of my, as it happens, totally coincidental, one of the members of my European Innovation Leadership Council. And Thanos and I have been working together for quite some time now. And Thanos, let me just go and why don't you introduce yourself with just a couple of words, and maybe also have your reaction on how did you feel when you first got presented with the new ISO standard.
Thank you, John, and welcome everybody to this call. Good morning, good afternoon from my side as well, depending where you're joining. And yes, John framed it quite nicely. I'm Thanos Yiagopoulos. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Momentive Performance Materials. I've been working with John under the umbrella of the Innovation Leadership Council for quite some time. And in the last session that John mentioned, Innovate Transform, which he hosted in Amsterdam, I got the first glimpse of the standard. And honestly, my reaction was the same. We need less bureaucracy in technology. We need less control of systems. However, what we really need is a framework to really pinpoint what should we be doing in a more holistic manner, from leadership to support to operation to communication. And in my experience in recent years, this is something that I've been actually taking a lot of feedback from the conference board to construct all these elements into a holistic innovation management process. So I found it quite interesting to do the assessment, and also by doing the assessment, understand where are elements of strength, but also what elements of improvement. And today, I think we're going to take a deep dive on those, and that's something very exciting for us. The question is actually for us at Momentive, can we use this as a future framework to assess our capability of innovation management system going forward? We're going to find that out in the future, but then I'll give it back to you, John, I think, to introduce calling and get into this discussion. So thank you for having me today.
Yeah, it's great. And indeed, what we have done here, as you already alluded to, Thanos, is we let Colin let Thanos do the innovation maturity assessment for his company, for his organization. And so we're going to, in this call, as you probably have seen from the announcement, we're going to go and get a live unveiling of those results. So Thanos is going to get some first glimpse, I guess is the word, of how his organization is actually scored within that. And we thought this was a nice way to bring the what is often a conceptual and technical framework to life, and so you can start to see you can start to see the power of it, feel the power of it. So with that, I'd like to introduce Colin Nelson, who is indeed the expert from Hype Innovation. Colin's been living this standard work now for already a couple of years, right, Colin? I'll let him introduce and lay the land, and then also gradually get into the results of the assessment. So Colin, over to you. Thank you
Yeah,
for joining.
fantastic. Thank you, John, for hosting me us today. So yes, as you say, I've been living this standard for a little while now. I'm a former corporate innovator myself, at a time when there were no standards or structures or best practices or North Stars to follow, and often struggled with my own leadership and organization to try and embed good innovation practices. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Chief Innovation Consultant at Hype, and my world really is supporting organizations around innovation performance. So how do we get better at the world of innovation? And I think I echo what both of you said in terms of some degree of initial skepticism around a standard for innovation management when I first heard about it a few years ago. But I think the deeper I've got into it, the more I've realized just how helpful this can be for my clients. And I'll explain a little bit about how I see it in a second. And then we'll talk a little bit about the innovation management assessment, which is the process that Thanos has been through. But let's just kind of take a slight step back. We've had the ISO 56002, which was the guidance standard for some time since 2019. I took an initial look at it, and my initial feeling was, yeah, makes sense. There's everything there I would expect it to be. But like all these things, you need to let them settle and ponder on them and test them and validate them before you really dig into it. Back in September last year, to 2024, the 56001, which is the standard against which you can be accredited, was released. And the way to see this is it's an internationally recognized best practice for innovation management systems. It's the system, it's the hierarchy, the structures around innovation management. I like to think about it as a management system within which innovation can thrive. So just by implementing it does not necessarily deliver innovation, but it's more likely to deliver a good performing innovation management system if you do have it. Now, what's interesting is that I categorize organizations into two lumps. So there are companies that are seeking accreditation, and at some point in time, when they've done the documentation and they've been through the gap analysis, they will actually seek accreditation. And I think this tends to be more of interest to business services organizations, those companies that are competing not just for today's business, but also for tomorrow's business. They are looking at it as a competitive differentiator to be able to say to their prospective customers, hey, we're going to be an innovative partner for you for the long haul. Then there's a second category, which is a larger group, who are not necessarily seeking accreditation right now, but are very interested in aligning to the standard. And these tend to be medium to low maturity organizations in terms of innovation management, and they're seeing it as a good North Star to follow. However, it isn't everything. All right, it gives us the structure, but it doesn't standardize innovation, which I think was probably all of our shared skepticism. What it does is it gives you that umbrella, that North Star to follow. There are things that are important when it comes to innovation performance, which this does not include and will probably never include. So, for example, where are we starting from as a company? What is our current baseline? What's our culture like? What kind of structure do we have? How are we organized? Are we very hierarchical, or are we very flat as a company? Our commercial and innovation objectives. And so these sort of question marks are typically my day job, is helping organizations to fill in the gaps and work out what a sensible roadmap or path forward would be from where we are to build confidence in innovation management system, deliver results as we go along, so we can build more innovative cultures and more dynamic enterprises. So that's perhaps the way to think about the standard. It's a great North Star to follow, whether you seek accreditation or don't.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Oh,
go ahead,
sorry,
John.
go on.
I'm just going to make a point about the innovation management assessment, because what we've thought was it's probably helpful for organizations to have some form of initial entry point just to get a sense of how are we doing right now? What is our starting point? And I just wanted to flag this up very briefly for you, because this is going to be the sort of core of what we're going to go through here. So Hype wrote an innovation management assessment. It's an automated assessment, really, like a little self-selection, very simple. We're going to show you some of Thanos's answers in a moment, but it's basically built around the innovation management standard, and anybody can go and complete that. That's a free thing to do. It will give you a report at the end of it, and one of our consultants will also offer a review in terms of how you're doing. I would say it's more orientated to a medium to large organizations. So, if very small organizations, it's probably going to be a bit heavyweight for you. But for medium to large organizations that are trying to get a sense of where you're up to, this is a process you can go through. So you can find it on our website, but also you can follow this QR code as well. And I'll flash this up later for anybody that wants to carry out that assessment. But this is essentially what we're going to be reviewing with Thanos today, is like how he felt going through this process and how he felt Momentive is doing as a whole.
Yeah, and then that's what I've really started to see as one of the key benefits, which is stepping back from what you're doing, the busy being busy, right,
Yeah.
all the time that we all are. And how are we really doing?
Mhm.
Where are our strengths that we can double down on, and where are the opportunities we should focus an intervention on? Our interventions on. So this is going to be great grounding, Colin. And by the way, one very nice question already on your grounding by S. Ibrahim I saw coming in. Are those standards industry neutral, or are they different by medical, nature sciences, consumer goods? I'm making this up.
Yeah, great question. Actually, yes, they are industry neutral. They're at a high level enough that any organization can apply it. So whether you're a services company, a product company, a pharma, whatever you are, they are industry neutral. They should give you the structures and frameworks that any organization should adopt. Having said that, by definition, therefore, they don't tell you the how, right? They tell you the what are we aspiring to, the structural elements, but because it is industry neutral, there will be lots of work for you still to do to make sure you can apply it to your specific circumstances.
Of course, the specific interventions you need to work yourself, right? Of course, if
Hmm.
you want help, then Hype or any other company can help.
Exactly.
But yeah, this is good. Okay. The question was answered. The question was answered properly, Yassi. Thank you for engaging. And by the way, any question, as you can see, we want to make this as interactive as possible. If anybody's got any point of view on everything or question, definitely on the way that Founders is going to look at his results. I would very much welcome your thoughts as well, and I'll see how I can squeeze them in either immediately or towards the end. With that, thank you, Colin. It was really nice grounding, setting us up properly, and I'll just let you continue and give us that first glimpse on. I think the first part of the assessment is the context of the organization, if I remember.
Yeah, that's right. And just before I get there, I'm just going to very briefly give Thanos a quick view on how he's doing. And what you can see here from the radar chart, these are the 7 areas we're going to go through, starting off with context of the organization, is that Momentive is in a very, very strong position. In fact, of all the organizations that have completed the IMA so far, Momentive scores the best, which is going to be great because it gives us some stuff to, hopefully Thanos can share with the rest of us in terms of what they're doing materially to help explain, other learning points that probably should be transferable between organizations. That's really exciting and fantastic grounding here from Momentive.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
the structure is going to follow like this. I'm going to show you the types of questions that appear within the section of the innovation management assessment that has been completed. There are 7 sections. We'll probably get through most of them if we have time. And then I'm going to just explain to you a little bit about what core elements are included within that section. And then I've got a question to Thanos, so hopefully you can explore this particular theme in a little bit more detail. So we're going to start off with context of the organization. That is ISO language, for those of you who aren't familiar with it. In our innovators world, it's innovation strategy, basically. And this section really emphasizes that organizations need to consider both internal and external factors. So think about structures, culture, resources, as well as market trends and regulations and new technologies. It also builds in stakeholder expectations. So when defining the scope and applicability of their innovation management system, all of that kind of comes together here. And any organization focusing on those areas is required to establish, implement, maintain, and continually improve relevant processes. So looking at the inputs, the outputs, the interactions, responsibilities, resources, risks, and the performance measures that help ensure an effective innovation management system. So what you can see from the scoring is that Momentum's doing really well here. And I think to an area to dig into, I'd like to talk about the external signals. I think this is a common challenge for lots of organizations, is absorbing and processing all of the different bits and pieces that are coming at us. So because there are so many things to listen to. So be it customers' feedback or trends or emerging technologies. Maybe it's something that an employee picked up at a conference. And I wondered, Thanos, if you could share with us, how do Momentive manage this? Could you walk us through this approach to managing the external signals?
Yes, certainly. I think before I can answer your question, let's set the stage of what is Momentive, because I believe your audience might not know the company. So Momentive is a specialty chemical company in the silicon space. We are a material solutions provider. We're a decentralized organization, $2.5 billion company in this space, having locations in 20 different countries, over 40 offices and R&D centers, 10 R&D centers, 40 sales offices around the world. We have 4,000 customers in 100 countries, and we're focusing specifically on bespoke solutions for silicon additives and silicon formulated products. So this is a truly specialty chemical company which thrives on understanding market needs and trends, understanding the applications, and deriving the right chemistry to impact those applications in order to enrich experience of customers or create more sustainable solutions, being our key credo, solutions for sustainable work, which drives the visionary direction of the company. So just to put this into context, because some of the things I'll be talking about might not be relevant for other industries, but in this context, we really thrive on understanding the market needs and understanding different drivers in different spaces, meaning vertical markets, healthcare, automotive, consumer, construction, which also tend to have different needs in different regional setups, which provides a different level of complexity into that. So one of the things that we're doing at Momentive is that we're actually focusing in understanding the space, the outside space, in two ways. One, we have a very rich customer base from which we actually draw a lot of insights. A lot of understanding comes from our customers. However, in many cases, we've realized that that's not enough. So beyond the customers, we tend to do specific strategic marketing analysis for vertical markets. So we take, let's say, the healthcare market and analyze what is going on in the healthcare market with respect, what are the megatrends that are driving the needs for megatrend solutions within the healthcare market, with implantables, with biopharma tubing, which we are very strong, with understanding of delivery of drugs and so on at different levels, and translate those needs into products and solutions that are relevant for us, being a silicones manufacturer. We do that with external partners. So we hire external partners and we do a specific strategic marketing analysis and uncover needs that we're unaware that we can translate into application and products. We've actually categorized that with the framework that's based on mainly the desirability we see in the market. And then we take those learnings and go back into our customers and do a VOC, whether actually those trends are real or not. We do this for every market segment that we are actually highly engaged in. We do it in the automotive market, we do it in healthcare, aerospace, aviation, consumer, personal care, and agriculture. Those are main markets that we're represented. And then we triangulate that with our customer voice. All of that is fed into a system which is driven by an analysis that is actually allowing desirability, feasibility, and viability. And we try to boil those down into 10 or 20 specific activities that we turn into new products and applications. This is a process that we follow to really analyze external signals. So to answer your question, we don't necessarily rely only on what our customers are telling us, what we pick on trade fair shows, and what we get from interactions. We also do an independent analysis and triangulate the two, and we found that this method also provides us with additional insight, because in many cases, our customers in the vertical markets that they actually are representing, they know what they're heading, but they don't know exactly the solution. So what this boils down enabling is what we call design thinking and innovation, that you get very close to your customers that are interested in the solutions you're providing, and you can start enabling that solution working together. Just to give you another example of how this is manifesting over the years, through the course of the last 6 years, our industry guidepost in understanding external signals has been driven by two factors. One is regulation, and two is sustainability. So everything we see out there in the market, whether it is coming from our own customers or coming from our strategic marketing analysis, can be bucketized in these two areas. So having a guidepost around changing regulation and sustainability help us actually decipher a lot of those signals. The other thing that this has enabled the need for a lot more collaboration. So when when we're talking about external signals, going back 6 years ago and now, the number of non-disclosure agreements that I have signed has increased threefold with regards to not only customers that were incumbent customers of Momentive, but also smaller companies, formulators, universities, startups. All of that is becoming part of that ecosystem, which makes it in the future very difficult to decipher. So if I can actually make a suggestion in the next 5 years, based on what we're doing today, I think the future will be through some form of artificial intelligence that should help us actually decipher those external signals and make it tangible for us. So today we use a system that's more structured in a way of combining both external analytics, but also customer feedback. In the future, I think this will be very, very heavily driven by AI. I hope this answers your question on the external signals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then some.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was a great explanation, and indeed, it just also is a very nice illustration of that complexity of external forces that are going on around us. It's incredible, and as you said, it's very hard to keep a clear view on, right? I mean, you haven't even mentioned new technologies in all of this as well, right? I mean, even those and I find sometimes senior leaders say, yeah, no, we sort of knows what's, we know what's going on, AI and blockchain, all this stuff, but do you really know what the implications for your business, the applications for your business? And if you don't use it, what happens with your competitors? And then you also mentioned the ecosystems, which I see as a whole new trend. I mean, innovation ecosystems are popping up everywhere. People, leaders in companies do understand that doing it by yourself is not good enough anymore. And that adds another layer of complexity on it, right? So indeed, finding ways to manage that with new technologies, keeping yourself sane almost feels to be a priority. Thank you for that. That was really cool.
Right.
Hey,
one
question. One question on the question that we got again from S. Ibrahim. Thank you for engaging. Who does the survey? And you said mostly the senior leaders, right? But you could also, sometimes the senior leaders have a much better view of how they are doing than what their organization is seeing. Right. So you could also do this and I guess contrast, the view of the senior leadership with the folks deeper down in the organization to see where the realities lie, correct?
Exactly. I think the IMA is very much designed for innovators. And so any innovator in an organization can do it. And seeing that contrast is definitely interesting. What I would say is it's a level of detail which is a little far for your average employee that maybe is just, sitting in a brainstorming session or sharing ideas. For those sorts of cultural assessments that we need to do something a little different. And we do have those kind of things. But this IMA, absolutely very interesting to compare leadership perspective with innovators a little bit further down.
Okay.
All right.
Cool.
So let's move on to the leadership section, I think,
Yes.
which is perfect follow-on from this. And so this leadership area, again, very strong performance from Momentive. And maybe just to give you some context to everyone, this is how leaders are interacting with the world of innovation, I suppose, and how well embedded they are into the innovation management process. So this is where we're aligning around goals and the system itself and how it's integrated into everyday operations. But leaders also are responsible for allocating resources and supporting the innovation management system so it can be continually improved. So my question to you, Thanos, given again you're doing so well, is maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you structure leaders engaging with innovation. So some organizations, for example, have like an innovation governance board, and they'll be focused on the balance of the portfolio and how that's aligned to corporate goals. Others devolve their responsibilities into divisions, and they're responsible for delivering profit and revenue. And for others, innovation is baked into every single leader's measurement. So how does this happen at Momentive?
That's a great question. I think we have a very structured approach to this. And again, I'll explain what we do and share some of the best practices. Might not be applicable for others, but I think at least it works for us. So at my level, at the senior leadership level, when we talk about innovation, it boils down to our corporate direction, deciphering or deciding the markets, the vertical markets that we want to play as Momentive. And the vertical markets that we want to win in the next 5 years. We always have a 5-year horizon, which actually is proving to be a good system for us going forward. So at my level, I think what we're actually agreeing upon based on our analytics and our strategic planning is these are the 5 or 6 or 9 markets that we want to participate and have number 1 or number 2 position. Now, beyond that, what we do is we drive the accountability of the portfolio management and the individual segment strategy to individual segments. So for example, we have a beauty and personal care segment. We have an electronic materials segment. We have a healthcare segment. So all these segments actually are responsible of driving their own strategic analysis. And with that is actually aligned to what are the megatrends, as we said, how are those megatrends impacting those segments, and what is the portfolio of products that we need to lay out in the next 5 years. And we're using the jobs to be done framework to do this analysis, as well as a horizon approach, which is based on the well-known multi-generation product and technology pipeline assessment that lays out actions that we have to do now and actions that we have to do in our five-year horizon. So that work happens at the segment level, and those leaders are the ones responsible for deciphering, if you like, strategy into action, setting resources, and also driving execution. One important point, however, that's a competitive advantage for us that happens at my level is setting the tone of the culture and processes. I think this is very important because one of my most important responsibilities is to glue everything together. So by saying that means we need to have standardized processes across the organization, which are not rigid, but are very rigorous and allows us to really drive accountability. However, also it's important to set the right level of assessments with regards to rewards and recognitions, incentive compensation, what is our digital strategy, how is our technical career path for technical resources being assessed. All of that happens at my level. That does not diffuse at the segment level. It's important that you have oversight at the senior leadership level, so we continue to drive a culture of innovation, which is actually driven by standardization of processes, which means simply that people speak the same language around the organization. This enables for multiple things. One thing that this enables is collaboration. People can connect, and what I do a lot as a glue, I try to pull together out of those segment structures to collaborate with respect to sharing capabilities, whether it's analytical testing, whether it's pilot plant equipment, whether it's actually chemistries that are applicable in several areas. That's happening in my role and within my direct reports, as well as enabling cross-fertilization on talent, which is something that will never happen if people have different standards and different views. So the process excellence that drives culture, the standardization of a way out how people evolve, career paths and all that happens at my level, but the actual leadership of the segment portfolio happens at the segment level. So and that's actually how we structure it.
It sounds like, and this actually covers the next question I was going to ask as well. So let me just to clarify, it sounds like you've got an umbrella view, a portfolio, a holistic portfolio of everything that's there at a high level that senior leadership can look across different segments. But then within the segment, they're also doing their local portfolio adjustments according to new trends, regulations, strategies at a divisional level almost as well.
Yeah, now that's very true. And if you look at it from a specific segment dynamic, that the regional element cannot be actually assessed at the senior level. So if I look at the personal care industry, if you look at the Western world, what happens in Europe and the US, this market is driven a lot by the big players like the L'Oreals, the Shiseidos, the Estée Lauders, the Procter & Gambles of this world. They define the structure, and they're the ones that are actually adhering to not only the market trends, but also to the evolving regulation, which happens mostly here in Europe. If I move into Asia, there is a lot more new trends, a lot more smaller customers with a lot of innovation. There's a lot more differentiation of market needs that driven from conceptions of social trends and regional tendencies, which is impossible to really highlight at the macro level. So you have to go deep to understand that market. So understanding the market layout happens at the segment level, and this drives obviously your innovation portfolio. I hope that makes sense to you and your audience.
The one thing that struck me, I mean, I was happy to hear that you emphasize culture, which is one of my hobby horses, culture of innovation. And Colin, back to you. And of course, by the way, Thanos, I wasn't surprised that it was very high on your scoring because I know how you operate by now, and how important that is to you. And not all leaders believe that and feel that, right? They often, delegate culture to their HR person. And you want a culture of innovation, then go and develop one and come back in 3 months, and we're going to go and start, which of course the kiss of death, right? HR is important, but it's a partner, not as a decider of what the culture. The leader needs to own the culture. As a CTO, you need to own the culture of your organization. And then when I was reflecting on that, and I look back at the other charts that we're still going to talk, culture is not highlighted as a separate entity in this effort. And if it was me, I probably would. I would probably go and double down on culture. Definitely when it comes to Europe, by the way, because there's a lot of talk around R&D, R&D, R&D. But people forget that R&D is only R&D. It's research and development. It is only feeding into innovation. It doesn't really. It is not innovation. Innovation is when you create new value out of your R&D efforts, and that's not very. In Europe, we're not very good at that, as what I've historically we've seen. And so more emphasis on that actually. Yeah, I don't know if I would be working on an ISO 5603, then I would maybe.
It's a great point. It's a really great point, and actually, it's a conversation I've had with some of the people that wrote the standard. Culture is embedded into the threads of all the different sections in pieces, but of course, culture is a subjective thing. And what I would like to emphasize is what innovation behaviors do we want to see, and what is it we want somebody to do tomorrow that they're not doing yesterday? Because if we can start to encourage innovation behaviors, we can start to shift culture. And I think that it is something that is going to have to be addressed on an organization by organizational level, but it isn't expressly pulled out. And I think you're right, it's a good area for improvement. I'm going to skip over the planning session just because we've kind of already covered this in the answer from Thanos previously, but just so that the folks are aware, there is a section here which we're just skipping over here, and this is really about proactively identifying risks and opportunities, setting measurable goals, and aligning into innovation strategy, which is very much what Thanos has just been talking about. So what we can do is move on to the support section of the process, and you can see here that there's some, I'd say, a bit more variance in terms of the answers here that we saw from before. So moving on to this section, I think this is probably one of the weaker areas slightly is communications, which we can perhaps dig into, Thanos, if you like. And this is common across a lot of organizations, is having this sort of dedicated innovation comms. I think it's just an underinvested area for corporate innovators. And from my perspective, I think communications is critical to helping building the culture that John talked about. It can help build reputation for the program, internal belief. Maybe you can share with us a little bit about where you think Momentive can perhaps improve here, and what you see perhaps happening and what's not happening.
Yeah, and I think when I did the assessment, this popped out immediately, and this is something that is well known. And if you ask people in your audience who knows Momentive, Momentive is not a well-known company because our branding is very weak. Whenever I want to present Momentive at conferences, people ask me, "What does Momentive do?" And when I say them, well, Momentive is the old GE Silicons, everybody jumps up because GE has a much stronger branding around the world than Momentive would ever have. So that's an area of improvement, and I think this is something that we've struggled to master as an organization, and there's several reasons for it. One main reason that I've discovered is the decentralized nature of our organization, the fragmented nature being representative in all these vertical markets and vertical spaces. I think we've done much better on a product level, so some of our product brands are well known in the practitioners areas that actually those products pop up, but not as a company as a whole. And one of the things that we're trying to do lately is really go outside and share a story, and share the story of what we have been doing both at a macro level, which is kind of this discussion, understanding what we do well and what we need improvement, present our organization, but also share some of the best practices with respect to products, with respect to applications and things that we've achieved over the period of years. But most importantly, some of our failures, and I have had significant success internally actually sharing failures, going in front of the senior leadership team and going in front of manufacturing and internal constituents, mostly internal, and sharing our failures. For example, how much money did we spend learning over the period of the last 8 years in my tenure, and what did that actually enable in terms of new product pipelines that have emerged. So going out and telling those stories, not only sharing your strategic objectives and vision, but really telling stories that actually impact people's lives with respect to products they're using or experiences. Let's say you drive a car and you have a tire that has a Momentive product, and you can feel that you have less consumption of fuel using that tire versus another tire. That's a story you can tell, and we have not done that quite well. And that is something that not only going through the standard highlighted is something that I knew in the past, but this is an area of clear improvement for us and something that we can do better. both from leadership visibility, myself telling those stories, but also going out there in the marketplace and be more visible in that manner. This is an area, and I think this is where the standard can help a practitioner like myself highlight spots, or let's say verify understanding where there's opportunity for improvement.
Yeah, on this one, just I can only reinforce the power of storytelling. And maybe the only add I can you know, in the learning from success, learning from failure, learning, and sharing those learnings. That's what we need to get into. In my teaching, I use the Satya Nadella course. Sorry, in my teaching course, I'm using the Satya Nadella Microsoft case when he came into Microsoft, and he transformed what he calls it a know-it-all culture to a learn-it-all culture. And that is so powerful. I mean, look at the results that he's been able to go and you know, generate. And I think the opportunity for you, Thanos, as well, is that, you know, recognize it. You know, you're a great communicator, but you can't do it all. So how can you get your team to go and help to go and also make up the, you know, create those stories, generate those stories, pull them together, and share them back with your organization, and also externally. So I always say that a purpose has maximum power when it's totally aligned with internal and external. You communicate one and the same thing internally and externally. If you get that alignment, it's so powerful. I mean, Apple is the best example of that, right? Not only does them usually motivated people, despite Steve Jobs not necessarily being the kindest of individuals, as we all know.
Yeah, you're hitting at a very important point, John. I think what I would say to this one is that if you look at the technology organizations, R&D organizations, depending which company you are, application driven, inherently you don't have great communicators in this organization. So it's something that we're missing. We have people that are more technically astute, and looking for us as a chemical industry, most of our resources are engineers and chemists, and you can understand that most of them are really driven by the beauty and the excitement of science, the excitement of creating new applications, and not so much of going outside and exciting others by telling that story. So this is something that I think our industry is inherently suffering from. It's probably a systemic element for many chemical companies, especially for those like us, which have been an amalgamate of different cultures. We have a heritage from GE, heritage from Union Carbide, a Toshiba heritage, and all of that. I think this is something that I realized late in the game, that this is something that we have to develop as a skill set. Yeah. So you're right.
You may go out and identify a few of the individuals that have actually that potential. You know, within Procter & Gamble, where I spent my 30 years before I retired, we had this, as you and I may have talked once, we had this product research function, right, which is a sub-function of R&D, that has those individuals that are interested in technology, but also in, you know, deeply going into the consumer homes and deeply working with marketing on the communication, and taking the consumer signals back to the R&D organization and guide that. And that's a very powerful, I think, intervention to make. But yeah, it's not easy to do, as you said, in your industry. All right, continuing along, Colin.
Yeah, fantastic. So I think there's 3 sections left. I'd like to get into a couple of them if we can. I'm going to move on to the operation of the innovation management system. So we're going to talk a little bit about how organizations have planned and implemented and followed up on the controls. Hopefully you can still see my screen okay, and we are going to go into the next slide. There we go. Operation. So this operation section is really about systematically planning, controlling, documenting innovation processes, some of the stuff that Thanos has already talked about, and ensuring that all the initiatives that we explore align to the strategic goals and are supported by resources and responsibilities. And I think, again, you know, Momentive is doing really well here. But one of the things that sort of stood out to me as an area that I think many organizations struggle with, and it seems that you do pretty well, and I think you touched on it very briefly in the earlier parts, is around validation of concepts. You know, innovation takes time. The world moves fast, and unless we are validating what we're creating with the potential buyers of that thing, the world can move beyond us, and we can just simply get to market at the wrong time. So I was interested to see how you have systematically built that into your process, that validation loop. And we can touch on this relatively quickly if you wish. But yes, how are we actually engaging with those potential buyers to make sure that we continually stay aligned?
Yeah, that's a great question. Let's put it in perspective with respect to a few data. So in 2019, we did an analysis to ascertain why new products fail at Momentive. And then we were about 75% was because of desirability, meaning not understanding what the customer really wants. We repeated that analysis a year later, and it came out similar percentage. So we really focused on putting effort on understanding desirability. And in order for you to understand desirability, to John's point, you need to get close to the market, understand the market needs, but also verify that through specific customers who eventually become your qualification partners. That's the only thing that works for us. And I think one element that we've done well over the years is that in order to get that discussion going, we've invested in application development and testing of our materials to replicate what some of our customers are doing. So analyzing the market, as I said, using the jobs to be done framework with strategic marketing resources externally, independent of the customers, triangulating the two, but also having the ability internally to validate concepts and find that qualification partner, have the discussion. Now, we have been reducing that percentage gradually now, but we cannot get it to zero. We still will not be perfect in really fully understanding what the market needs are, because to your point, things are changing so fast that it's impossible for us to really capture those trends on let's say on a yearly manner. However, what we do well at this point, we've actually created an ecosystem internally that aligns that well with the rest of the organization, so we can rally around once we nail a concept to be fast in following that concept, which was the other 30% that we were missing. So we did a lot to really improve our ability to be fast, and that means we've invested a lot in digital systems and all in pilot facilities around the world. And as the geopolitical dynamics change in region for region, we had to adjust ourselves to invest on the different regions where markets were growing the fastest, depending on where we're heading. But I think the element that changed the game here is understanding that our new products failed because of desirability at the customer. And desirability is a word. It's very difficult to get to that desirability because it actually has to do with what the customer wants to share with you. And in order for us to really advance that needle there, you need to really be able to offer excellent technical support. With that being said, specifically what that means for us is you need to really be able to educate your customer. Why does the product work the way you want it to work? And what is the science behind the solution we're offering? Once you get at that level, then desirability discussion becomes very easy, or at least easier. And that gives you a door opener for new applications, new development, and so on. So that is the area we've invested a lot, and that's a combination of technical investment in application, chemistry, piloting, alignment, but also external focus on strategic marketing and marketing analytics.
The one thing that I keep pushing in this space it feels like we're almost flipping around innovation and strategy we need to do that almost in this era. It used to be, you set out your strategy for the next 3 to 5 years, a small group, firm plans, mostly it's actually strategic planning, isn't even strategy, it's really planning. And then, is innovation a part of that? Maybe yes, maybe no, maybe you focus on customer excellence, whatever it is. In this day and age, with the change that are happening so fast around us, it's not optional anymore. It almost feels like you want to go into experimentation and learning and experimentation and try things out and then see what sticks. I was at a panel conversation with Professor at Cambridge recently, and he said, we have to stop talking about R&D. And I based on my earlier point, I go like, hey, this guy's onto something. And then he goes like, we need to talk about ENS. And I go, ENS? What does he mean with ENS? Experimentation and skill. He goes like, we need to get into this mode of experimentation and skill, try things out. And indeed, that is a bit, if you read HBR, for instance, this is the whole new discipline that is emerging really, really quickly. And seems like you're getting, and of course, that closeness to the customer is absolutely, pivotal in that.
Yeah, those two trends have changed dramatically the last, I would say, 4 years. The one trend is the speed you mentioned, the agility. So if I look at all of our product lines, everything has reduced from a product life cycle about 15 to 20% in scale, going back to the last 20 years. And the other thing is the geopolitical dynamics have created an in-region for region focus, which at this point in time has been amplified versus the last 5 years, which changes a little bit how do you position resources and investment to get to that point. Yeah. So we have to be on our toes, and things are moving very, very fast. So obviously we need some sort of different model in the future. And I agree with that. You need to be more agile in terms of scaling, experimenting, testing. Yeah. Even in R&D.
Right.
Yeah.
Amy Edmondson even calls it strategy as learning, which may be a bit exaggerated, but we need to get towards that mode, which I like a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
Fantastic.
Colin,
So I think we're going to
let's
leave.
do
We'll have
more, and
one
then
more
we open
section. Yeah, I think one more, and we'll talk about performance evaluation just to conclude this, to leave us a little bit of time for questions. So performance evaluation really is about measuring the innovation management system, ensuring that we're delivering value. It's about monitoring, measuring, analyzing, evaluating the performance of the system by looking at all the different moving parts, inputs, processes, outputs, and results. And it also emphasizes you should audit this approach. As you can see from the assessment, a couple of neutral answers, a couple of agrees. The area I'd like to dig into for performance evaluation is KPIs. Through my work over the last couple of decades of consulting to innovation leaders, the one thing that continually comes up as an area of challenge, even in the most, I would say, high levels of innovation maturity organizations, is measures and KPIs. Maybe you can share with us, Thanos, what you think you do well, and maybe where you think you can improve here, because I think this is a real pain point, and it's a sticking point that affects everything else. So we're not measuring stuff well. How on earth can we iterate and improve it? So how do Momentive do this?
Yeah, so I think this is a great point, and for us it's like the iceberg model, right? Coming from the top, what we report out to the board is value creation, as John mentioned, which actually, unfortunately for all of us, boils down into lagging indicators, which is sales or margin. But in reality, if you look at the iceberg itself, and what is at the bottom of it is really all of the lagging indicator, all the leading indicators. So the art here, and it's an art because there's no silver bullet solution, is really connecting those lagging indicators that actually indicate value creation to all the leading indicators that you have to influence to get there. And if you go down to the bottom of that iceberg, the lowest level of that iceberg is all about people. It's all about equity, creating an environment that people belong, creating an environment that you have diversity. And I'm not talking about diversity of gender. I'm talking about diversity of thought, diversity of nationalities, diversity of backgrounds, diversity in general that fuels creativity, which fuels innovation. And those are the hardest things to do and the hardest things to measure. And this is where all companies are struggling to put that in perspective, including ourselves. But also, what are the other leading indicators that you focus on, which is the execution of your programs, your launch calendar, your desirability assessment, how effective you are in those. And I think where Momentive, although we have a framework for all of those, where we're struggling is the differentiation of the segments in our businesses. So some of the stuff that worked for healthcare will not work for automotive, and some of the stuff will work for our electronics business will not work for ag. So we're struggling really to put all that in perspective and identify the leading indicators, measures that we have to be focusing on. However, I want to reiterate this because it's very important, and this is something that I discovered in my tenure here at Momentive as a CTO over the years. You will have to really demonstrate value at the board level, meaning the ROI of R&D, the ROI of technology application development needs to be there, because this is what actually is the value-driven function for every technology organization and for every leader at my level. However, your focus has to be at the lower level, which means your focus has to be what John mentioned, building the culture around people. That is the key driving engine of everything else. And if you do that well, then the metrics that you have in between might not matter much. As I mentioned, there's no silver bullet solution, but that is for me a key differentiation, how we should position ourselves as innovation leaders. Now, talking about those leading indicators specifically, one that actually stands out the most is really elements of execution, as I mentioned. That's something that all organizations should have, and all organizations should focus more on alignment and execution and all of the results. The results are an outcome of alignment and execution, and this is more where my work comes in to really ensure that alignment and execution, having the right metrics of stage gate execution, desirability assessment, but also collaboration and communication. Those should be my comments, Colin.
I wouldn't add. I mean, I got some thoughts on that, but we are short on time now, and I want to open the floor for some questions. make sure that we hear folks with some of their challenge. And I see Ibilola, if I pronounce it properly. If not, then I apologize. Thank you for engaging. You seem to be interested in demographics and technology adoption management. I'm not exactly sure what that means. I'm committed to smart implementation of technology across geographies and demographics. And demographies. Demographics maybe should be. So, Thanos, do you have any perspective around this topic? How do you manage demographic? You mentioned diversity, which, by the way, I fully agree. The diverse organization leads to better results, provided you really work hard on inclusion. Because if you do not work hard, it needs to be still, DEI is sort of, gains a bad rap for, I think, some, understandable reasons. But back to the principles, right? Let's go back to the way we used to talk about diversity and inclusion. Those two things need to come together. I think we would all agree on that. So maybe your thoughts on Ibilola's thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely, and I fully agree on that. So inclusion, that which leads to belonging, that actually fuels the power hidden in the diversity within a diverse cohort is the secret sauce here, and it's not easy to get it right, unfortunately. So from a demographics perspective, at Momentive, we actually track gender, we track ethnicity, and we track also different backgrounds with respect to I think we have 8 different backgrounds that we're looking at, which are relevant for our industry: material science, chemistry, chemical engineering, and the like, which, by the way, to your point, are changing significantly, because I don't feel we're going to be hiring a lot of chemical engineers in the future. We're going to be hiring a lot of people with AI skills, complementing chemistry and chemical engineering, which has been our baseline. So these are the demographics that we track. As a company, we are, I would call, a little bit blessed being decentralized, that we have talent pools around the world across different geographies. And those talent pools tend to work together, global programs. So if you look at one global initiative, you're going to see people from many different sites and a diverse pool of individuals with backgrounds. Inherently, being a company that's decentralized has that quality. But these are the elements we track. I'm particularly interested in correlating those elements lately with our performance, but I don't have enough data to provide a good understanding of how that correlation is at this point. Maybe in the next 2 to 3 years I will. Yeah, but this is what we're actually looking at Momentive.
And I would urge you all to look at that, by the way. What is the makeup of your organization? Thanos, remember in our last Innovation Leadership Council meeting, one of our colleagues mentioned the point on why is the German automotive industry suffering so much these days. And if you step back from it all, what kind of people are they? They're all mechanical engineers. And so mechanical engineers leading mechanical engineers leading mechanical engineers. And so they are like obsessed with engines and stuff like that. And then when you look at why are the Chinese doing so well these days, they are software engineers that know how to go and make things move. And so are you indeed still, is the makeup of your organization still conditioned, set up to be positioned, I should say, set up to deliver the result you need in the future? Go and challenge yourself on that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And honestly, just for us, again, from a data point, we start from a very low point. So 8 years ago, we started from an extremely low point on gender diversity, and gender diversity was 15% or lower. From an industry, chemical industry has been around 32%. And we had to do specific actions to increase that to the level of the industry we're today, and we're around 32%. And we've seen a lot of change of, I would say, direction at a leadership level once we start implementing female leaders in our organization across the world. This has, especially, I'm talking about the R&D organization, and that has created a lot of directional elements of productive and constructive engagement, which has helped a lot, has helped creativity, but also well-being across groups, which now you can sense it. But in the next coming years, we will be able to take those numbers and correlate it to results. But I'm looking very forward to that. But that's just a data point for our viewers today.
Nice. Ibilola, you have raised your hand. You want to speak, or you want to write something down, or you were already covered?
Yeah, I'd just like to find out how you're leveraging core competencies in geographies and as a multinational company trying to lead in innovation?
So we have a core competency framework, which we actually start from corporate, and we translate down into the technology organization. So we've translated our core competencies. What do those mean for our technology organization? And within that, you will find inclusion, you will find strategic direction, you find innovation. And those are the key elements that we look at actually translating to our leaders, but also to our individual contributors. Our core competencies are also translated in our technical career path. That's something that we've done, and I've seen it happen in major organizations like 3Ms and Procter & Gamble's of this world, where we take our technical career path, which is the levels of competency that people have to reach to be promoted, and embedding those core competency by level into that framework. So as you grow in your role, you have to demonstrate more of those competencies, where you start by being able to run a project by yourself, and then collaborating globally, and then mentoring others, and coaching employees, and mentoring others to high levels of competence. So we've actually integrated that model as well. So yeah.
Thank you, Thanos. Excellent. And thank you for your question, Ilona. I need to start to wrap this up. We have 2 minutes left. Maybe final comments. Colin, you want to go with final comment?
Well, firstly, thank you to Thanos. Fantastic insights. I really appreciate you going through this and sharing such great insights with everybody that attended today. I think it's really interesting for organizations that are on this path towards improving innovation performance to hear how good performing organizations are doing it, because wrestling with things like culture and KPIs and leadership engagement, these are very, very tangible challenges for lots of organizations who are trying to get better at innovation. So yeah, thank you, and yeah, wonderful insights. Thank
you, Colin. Thanos?
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed going through this assessment calling, and I think it provides a lot of value at a macro level, as you mentioned, the senior leadership level, to really act as a guidepost of what is to improve and where we're heading, and also as a verification where we're doing well and what you can actually share with others as a best practice. So thank you so much for letting me go through this, and also for the invitation today. Appreciate it very much.
Yeah, and I really enjoy moderating this one more than any other thing I've moderated, because I learned quite a bit in today's session from the both of you. So thank you for making a novice a less of a novice. Very nice grounding, very illustrative examples, and great conversation. So thank you both, Colin and Thanos. I enjoyed this thoroughly, and thank you to the audience for having joined us. I hope you found this helpful. Keep engaging with Hype Innovation. If you need more help, Colin is there. Reach out to all of us. The Compass Board is another resource you may want to tap into, and hope to see you again at the next opportunity. And thank you, Rita, as well, for having done this excellent organization. I wish you all a great rest of your day / afternoon / evening, and I'll see you again. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.